It's time to get hype. Burst. Good morning, YouTube. What's up, guys? Another week, another fun shoe video. And this week's video is a little different. We're gonna talk all about the shoe that made me want to give up on Skechers Hyperburst altogether, and the shoe that came to the rescue. Let's get into it. A couple months back, I did a first run impressions video of the Skechers GoRun Ride 8. I was really excited to get my hands on this shoe because I loved the GoRun Ride 7, and now we have this brand new midsole material called Hyperburst that everybody had been talking about. I mean, the way you guys talk about Hyperburst, I had to try it, right? So my full intention was to do a first run impressions video in this shoe, which I did, and then do a full review after about 50 miles or so. But unfortunately, that didn't quite happen for me. Instead, the more I ran in the GoRun Ride 8, the more issues I began to have with it. Here are some of those issues. The upper felt a little too snug for me, and I have a narrow foot. I was able to look past that because it wasn't a huge deal breaker. It wasn't causing any major discomfort, but that's not all. On some of my later runs with this shoe, I started to feel the insole slipping backwards. This has happened to me in different shoes before, and usually if I readjust them and put them back in place, they kind of stay where they are. But not this time. But it began to cause irritation on my toes. This would happen while I was in the middle of my run, and I couldn't just stop my run and take my insoles out in the middle of the road and leave them there or hold them for the rest of my run. That's just not realistic, not something that anybody wants to be doing. On one of my treadmill runs, this kept happening and happening and happening, so I just ended up ripping the insole right out. Then the shoe was then too big, it had too much volume in here, and it just didn't work for me in general. So that's kind of a deal breaker for me. And another gripe that I kind of had with this shoe is that I didn't really feel like the Hyperburst midsole was all that great. It felt kind of firm to me underfoot, and in cold temperatures, it felt even firmer. I definitely felt like it was temperature sensitive. Listen, it was by no means hard as a rock, but it didn't have that magical feel underfoot that you guys had described in the Razor 3 or even in some of your experiences with this shoe. I just didn't feel that. So I was ready to put Hyperburst to rest and just chalk it up to something that doesn't work for me, that I don't like, that I feel was kind of underwhelming. But then something changed. I was talking to one of my YouTube pals, shout out Mark, and he suggested trying a different shoe with Hyperburst. I'm putting you down for a second. Finally, I decided to go for the Razor 3. And I'll tell you what, I do not regret my decision. I missed out on this shoe a year ago when it came out. I just slept on it, didn't think about it too much. I did see that everyone was raving about it and was sort of interested to try it, but I just had other shoes and other things going on. So I'm a little late to the game, but I'm here to tell you a year later that this is still a game changer. So instead of sitting here ranting about the GoRun Ride 8, we're gonna put it to bed. Good night. And we're gonna move on and we're gonna talk all about the Skechers Razor 3 Hyperburst today, a shoe that has been on the market for over a year but should not be slept on. So let's start with the midsole of the Razor 3. I love the way the Hyperburst feels in this shoe. I mean, it feels like a totally different foam than it does in the GoRun Ride 8. It's amazing. The Hyperburst comes to life in the Razor 3, and that makes me think that maybe I just like the Hyperburst midsole in lower stack heights. But the feeling is really kind of like no other midsole on the market. It feels soft, but also responsive in every way and really lively. It has a nice bounce to it that you just don't get with standard EVA foams. The Razor 3 is marketed as a faster day tempo shoe / racer, and while I would absolutely use it for that, and I have, I could also see taking this out for longer mileage because of that cushioning underfoot. Ugh, I love the ride of the shoe. I would go out of my way to say that it even feels softer to me than the GoRun Ride 8 does. I think when it comes to Hyperburst, or when it comes to the GoRun Ride 8 and the Razor 3, less Hyperburst is actually more. Another kind of interesting thing is that the Skechers Razor 3 has a 4mm drop, which is usually a little too low for me. It starts to cause some stress on my calves and it doesn't feel great. But this shoe, I didn't have that problem at all. And it might be because the midsole feels so cushioned that I don't really super feel that low drop. After feeling the Skechers Razor 3 underfoot, I can absolutely see why it won the Runner's World Gear of the Year award for sure, and why it has such a huge following with you guys. I'm on the train. Another thing I love about the Razor 3 is how light it is. If you're worried about Hyperburst being a heavy midsole foam, I don't think you need to. This shoe has unisex sizing, so for my size 10.5 women's, which is a 9 men's, this shoe is 6.14 ounces, which is stupid light. It's crazy light. Oh, feels so good on your foot. And let's not forget about Skechers M-Strike technology, which this shoe has and the GoRun Ride 8 also has. And it's basically a little bump that sits in the midfoot area of your foot. You barely feel it, and it helps to roll you forward in your stride. And you know I love a rocker technology. As for the upper of the shoe, Skechers is calling this a ripstop mesh, which has some 3D printed overlays in the midfoot and a molded heel counter for some extra support. I found this upper to be pretty breathable and I didn't really have any issues with it. Some people have complained that the upper is a little bit narrow in that forefoot area, but I have a narrow foot, so I didn't have any issues with that, and I felt like I had plenty of room in that toe box. I have seen a lot of people complaining about this crease right here in the toe box area. I obviously have it on my shoe, but I haven't had any problems with it. It doesn't dig into my foot. It doesn't cause me any discomfort yet. I really don't feel it unless I'm like walking around. As far as the aesthetics of the shoe, I don't need speed here. You know, we can do without this. Other than that, I dig the look of this shoe and I kind of like this black and white colorway too. Skechers. If we move on to the outsole of this shoe, you will see that there is minimal amounts of rubber. We got some rubber in the forefoot, a little bit on the lateral side of the midfoot, and we have some rubber in the heel. I haven't had any problems with it, although I have only ran on fairly dry surfaces with it so far. But after 20 miles or so, the traction pattern is still there. But I have an interesting theory about this outsole and how it sort of contributes to the ride of the midsole. In the Skechers GoRun Ride 8, wake up, you're on. Skechers is using a Goodyear rubber, which is great traction-wise, but I think, and I'm not positive, nobody's confirmed this for me, it's just a theory that I have. I think that this Goodyear rubber contributes to a little bit of a firmer ride in the GoRun Ride 8. For starters, the rubber is just thicker. The traction design is kind of raised in this triangular pattern, and it gives the shoe, in my opinion, a little bit of a stiffer, firmer ride. Now, I understand that this shoe is supposed to be the more heavyweight daily trainer that needs more durability than the Razor 3 does, but I'm a little bit worried that when they start incorporating Goodyear rubber into the Razor 3, that the ride is going to become firmer. I think if Skechers manages to use Goodyear rubber in the Razor 3, but kind of keep it thin with this similar pattern, which it looks like they have judging by the Razor 3 Plus that I've seen, then we should be okay and it should feel similar underfoot. I just really can't tell you guys how much I love this shoe. And I appreciate you guys humoring me for reviewing a shoe that's like a year old, but my God, like, how could I pass this up? I can't believe I went this long without it. I've done a bunch of tempo runs in the shoe from 5 miles, 4 miles, whatever. I ran 11 miles in it last week. It felt great on all of the runs. Like, there were no problems. I'm so glad that I took advice from my subscribers and tried a different Hyperburst shoe, because now I'm on board. So in conclusion, to sum up this video, this was kind of a big nay. This was a really big yay. Am I on board with Hyperburst? All the way. Ooh, that was so bad. Well guys, that kind of concludes this video. If you enjoyed it, please like it down below and subscribe. And when you're done with all that, hit that notifications bell down below so you can find out every time I upload a new video. If you're interested in picking up a pair of the Skechers GoRun Razor 3 yourself, Running Warehouse has you covered. Just go to the link down in the description below, click that, buy your pair, and you're all set. It is an affiliate link, which doesn't really matter to you, but it helps the channel out, which I always appreciate. The shoe is $135 there, but if you use my coupon code RUNHELLER in all caps, you can get 10% off, so it's a deal, it's a win-win. I have another video for you guys next week, but in the meantime, get out there, get on the grind, and don't forget to run like Heller. See you next time. For my size, which is, this shoe is unisex. This shoe has unisex sizing for